Yo, asshole, you down there?
So here's a hypothetical question for you. What if The Evil Dead was actually a psychological horror film? Well, you may get blood conscious. This one written and directed by Timothy Covell. It reminds me so much of The Evil Dead, but with elements of Get Out, a kind of psychological thriller, but with a kind of deeply dark comic vein as well. What's the story? Well, it focuses on this brother and sister and the sister's boyfriend. And as the three of them are travelling to a kind of a remote cabin in the woods. It's by a lakeside. It's not completely kind of, on its own. There's a small community there. But when they get there, they discover that the inhabitants seem to be murdered by a mass shooter. And the guy is still there, and he seems to be crazed, and he thinks everyone is a demon. And, our three kind of protagonists, try to plead for their lives. Maybe this guy will spare them. Now, as the story goes, without kind of revealing anything too much, the paranoia and the fear is starting to grow. This guy is, he's murdered, by the looks of it, 15, 20 people, and is claiming that they're all kind of demons and things like this. Now, is it just crazed paranoia of the ramblings of a madman who has committed, an atrocity? Or is there something to what he's saying? Well, you're going to have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss what works in this film. Now, we review many low-budget films on this channel, and one of the things I could have said in some reviews is if you can't afford to do something, you're better off not doing it rather than kind of doing it poorly. This movie wisely spends what budget it has very well. It does not try to overextend itself, and instead has an excellent hook. So the kind of the setup seems fairly simple, but this movie, I have to say, is superbly done on keeping you on tenterhooks, not really knowing where it's going. Kind of saying, it could be this thing, but it could also be that, and kind of giving you, elements and clues to both. And, obviously we are seeing this through our kind of three protagonists' eyes, and, each of them has their own kind of opinion as the film progresses. More things are kind of revealed, we might get other kind of characters introduced, and the tension is kind of heightening all through the movie. It is a fantastic bit of low-budget filmmaking and a masterclass in building tension, I have to say. It's one of the best uses of a low-budget film with a killer idea executed with some fantastic writing and direction. I have to say as well, the majority of the cast do an excellent job making likeable and believable characters who you can kind of root behind, but you do see that they have different kind of point of views on certain things, but there's no real kind of right or wrong answer necessarily. Everyone has a valid point here. And it's a really good way of keeping this movie, keeping you as a viewer enthralled, because you genuinely don't know what the outcome of this movie is going to be, but you want to find out. You want to kind of go on this journey. And this movie isn't a flashy film. There's not kind of lots of kind of special effects and things like this. But it nonetheless has elements that reminded me so much of the Evil Dead film. It's clearly an influence, as I say, along with Get Out, and there's a little bit of kind of racial commentary in it. But it's also kind of a great kind of psychological thriller as well, because it really does kind of have you scratching on the kind of the walls of your skull, kind of trying to figure out what's kind of going on. Excellent, as I say, script here, and well performed by the majority of the actors. I also think the understated music really kind of helps this film, and has some kind of genuinely sort of creepy moments. The cinematography, I think, is great. Having this kind of this forest seem very kind of menacing, especially when it's dark, but also some claustrophobic moments within there as well. And there's a few kind of clever kind of sort of twists and reveals as the sort of film goes on. So all pretty good. What doesn't work? There are a few things, unfortunately, for me that didn't quite work. Number one, and this is relatively earlier on, but we discover when our trio of protagonists come to this this kind of house in the woods, they discover that among the dead are their parents. Now, that actual scene is shot very well, but what kind of bothered me a little bit was the kind of, they just did not seem distraught about it, and not enough for me. I mean, we have a scene a little bit later on where they're actually kind of sitting down and having a couple of beers and almost a little bit of a chuckle. I'm thinking, you've just seen your parents, you know, kind of like with shotgun wounds to them. It's just like, you would not be like this. And that was one of the things that to me just took away from kind of the otherwise quite palpable, realistic kind of tension. And kind of, you know, even for the rest of the movie, to be honest with you, they make mention of their parents, but I just think it could have been a little bit more kind of realistic and kind of depicted a little bit more grief. I know they wanted to get the story kind of going and things like this, but to me it just took away a little bit of the kind of the realism and having that kind of that movie kind of style of reaction to things where the reactions just aren't well. And then we get an introduction of a character a little later on who I would best describe as what is referred to today as a Karen. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. And I have to say, that character seems like they were from a different movie. I do not think the acting... I mean, the character is played to be somewhat odd by design, but to me it went a little bit too far at times, and I just think it was like... that character to me didn't quite work as well, because it just seemed a little bit too OTT, a little bit too sort of like, you know, deliberately kind of odd to the point where it kind of thinks, you kind of feel like you're in a different movie, if you ask me. And then, to be honest with you, are my two gripes. The only other thing I would say that I think may be a problem for some people is I think some without going into anything, I think some people may be a little bit disappointed with the end. I actually thought it might end kind of like this, to be honest with you. And I didn't mind the ending myself. I actually thought I didn't really see where it could go. And I think if it kind of like, if it went one way or another, it might have actually ended up deflating what I think it had built up. So I think how they ended it was probably the best way. But nonetheless, I can still see some people not really liking it, because it's, you know, it is what it is. However, how do I score this one? If you've watched my channel for any other time, you know that I think I'm fairly consistent with reviews. I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10, which is a score I very rarely give. I get commented. I don't really give high scores very often. But this one, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It was, and to me, that's a very high score. I very rarely give that high. It was excellent. I thought it was an excellent piece of filmmaking, with just a couple of minor niggles for me. But it was a masterclass in building tension and kind of paranoia, and done with, obviously with a very low budget, where we don't have anything too flashy sort of on screen, but still they make it work for the budget that they had. I think they got, you know, some fantastic actors. Let's say Karen, maybe not as good, but for the most part, everyone else I think does an excellent job here, and makes a very thoroughly engaging film. I would highly recommend this one. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.